welcome back to my channel. Welcome to a reading vlog. Today is a very special day because I'm finally going to be reading a book that I have been wanting to read for years now and that I have never picked up because I was intimidated by the idea of loving it. I tend to push off reading books that I think I'm going to love because I am scared of reading them at the wrong time, and so I just don't end up picking them up. But I think I'm finally in the mood to read The Secret History by Donna Tartt. I am very intrigued to get into this book, but I'm also a bit scared. I don't really know much about it. I know it's dark academia, of course, and I know that it kind of is the birth of that genre, or at least is one of the very early books that had this specific genre of dark academia, but I don't really know that much about it. I have read some Donna Tartt before. I read about a quarter of The Goldfinch in 2021. I think I was a bit young to read that then, not necessarily because I wasn't mature enough, but because I had a very different taste in books then, and I think I could appreciate her writing more now that I'm older. I also never ended up finishing it because I was reading it around Christmas, and then I got wrapped up in all the gatherings and the family and the celebration, and I just never ended up finishing it. All that to say that I'm not as intimidated by the writing as I could be because I have had a sense for it before. But today is finally the day. I'm going to section this video with spoilers at the end because I think I will most likely want to speak about some things that go on. So before I actually get started and read the first chapters officially, I am going to be reading the first paragraph out loud. The snow in the mountains was melting, and Bunny had been dead for several weeks before we came to understand the gravity of our situation. He'd been dead for 10 days before they found him, you know. It was one of the biggest manhunts in Vermont history. State troopers, the FBI, even an army helicopter. The college closed, the dye factory in Hampton shut down, people coming from New Hampshire, upstate New York, as far away as Boston. Hey guys, I know that I'm standing quite close to the camera, but this is going to be a quick update because I've only just finished chapter 1. I really loved chapter 1. It was so compelling. There was a part where the professor was telling the characters something that I thought was so interesting, and I really need to sit down and journal about that because it made me think a lot. I also got to the very famous quote, which I didn't know was from this book. And by the way, this is on page 30, so shouldn't really be spoiling anything, but it goes, "I am nothing in my soul if not obsessive." I think I've started to meet the core group of characters, and I am specifically really curious to see what leads up to Bunny's death, which I've now met Bunny, so really interested to see where it's gonna go. The characters are quite interesting. They're very morally gray and peculiar. They seem to be quite pretentious, and right now we're really from a outsider perspective because the main guy, Richard, has not really fully joined their group. He's starting to, but he's not fully wrapped up in what they do, so I'm really excited to see a little bit more of them. They seem like quite interesting characters to follow. So yeah, I'm gonna get back to this and I'll talk to you guys later. I am officially at book 2, so part 2 2. I do think it is about time I gave a little update on how I'm feeling. I honestly didn't expect what just happened in the last chapters, the last 2, but specifically the last one, to happen now. I had imagined this part to take place in the book probably in the second to last chapter, so I'm kind of curious actually to see what's going to happen after this, because I have no idea, especially because I'm about halfway. I think it's really interesting because in the first part I have come to have a pretty specific idea about some of the characters, but some of them remain a little bit of a mystery to me, so I am hoping that I get to know them a little bit more. The main character and the character whose point of view we're under, I think is a great narrator actually, because he is narrating his story from the future, like a few years later, which is really interesting. I actually really like how this book is set up. I do think that when I finish this book, I'm going to take a bit of time and dive into some of the Greek references from the book because I don't get all of them. I've been writing down the translations because sometimes they start speaking in Greek or any other language I don't know, like Latin, mostly, because they do also speak French, but thankfully I do speak French. So sometimes it's not translated, but I get the French, I don't get the Latin, and I don't get the Greek. So I've been pausing my reading to translate and everything, which honestly hasn't been that difficult, and I could have let it slide, but I'd rather know anyway. I think there are some very subtle winks, nods to things that happen in Greek mythology that I'm not getting and that I would like to get because I like Greek mythology anyway. I think it's a really, really interesting field that I should dive more into. It's kind of making me want to do research is what I'm trying to say. But I also think that I'm going to spend a few hours probably just watching Donna Tartt interviews, specifically ones talking about this book, because I think hearing her speak is going to be really interesting as well. That being said, I don't think there is any need to know every reference in this book. It's not really like that things are completely flying over my head. It's more that I want to know, so I'm going to take the opportunity, and then it's going to make me, I guess, enjoy the story more, or at least appreciate some of the things that I don't necessarily know much of. There are a few things that I do know because I took Latin for a year in middle school. Most of it don't really know what they're talking about, and I kind of want to. So I'm going to try and spend some time doing that. I feel like it's one of those books that the deeper you go into the detail, the more gratifying it is. All that to say, I'm going to start part 2. I'm really excited, and I'll talk to you later. Hey guys, I think this is going to be the last update before I finish The Secret History because I'm at chapter 8, which is page 475. I will say the fact that there are so little chapters is getting on my nerves a little bit because it's really hard for me to stop in the middle of a chapter, but I've had to do that because I can't spend 3 hours reading one chapter. I have plans and I have other things to do, and sometimes I just have to stop in the middle of it, and for some reason doing that with how my brain works really aggravates me, but it's really not bad enough for me to dislike the book. It doesn't really have any impact on how I feel about the content. I guess it's just more a complaint about the structure. Now that I am getting to the last chapter, I am a little confused with how this book is going to end. I have no idea what's going to happen. I am still liking the story. I think my last update was when I was at part 2, and so far part 2 has been interesting. It has been completely different to what I imagined, I guess. But yeah, I don't know what else to say, but I don't know where it's gonna go from now, nor do I know how I want it to end. It's kind of confusing. I'm really enjoying it though. The writing is still great. The way the story is written is really good. I've also, since I think part 2 actually, have started to listen to the audiobook a bit, so I've been bouncing back and forth because Donna Tartt narrates it herself, and that's been found quite enjoyable. But I will say, when I listen to an audiobook, I'm still sitting with the book and reading at the same time or annotating at the same time, because I can't continue to concentrate if I don't do that. But yeah, still really liking it, still really enjoying it. I don't know if it's going to be a favorite for me, mostly because I don't know how it's going to end. I will know once I get to the end. I am really enjoying it, and it could be a favorite, but even out of my favorites, it wouldn't be a 6-star read. I can't explain it better than the difference between a 6-star and a 5-star, even though I don't really read books anymore. Still really enjoying it, really curious to get to the end. This last chapter is really long, so I'm gonna break it between today and tomorrow. I'm going to try to film my reaction to the ending. I don't know if there is any plot twist or anything coming up like that, so I don't know how interesting it will be to film my reaction to the ending, but I still want to do that just in case. So yeah. So I finished The Secret History about over a week ago, and I have a few thoughts that I wanted to share. I actually am refilming this outro, bear that in mind, but essentially overall I think that the more time has gone by, the more I've been enjoying the book and the more I've been thinking about it. It's one of those that you just end up sitting with and really take in. I haven't had time to watch Donna Tartt interviews yet, so I'm going to do that pretty soon, but it kind of put me in a small slump in that I couldn't really move on from it, and so I wasn't in the mood to read anything else, really. But I think that the ending was especially really interesting, and it made me have so many theories that I'm going to share in the spoiler section. Overall, I really loved the writing and the way that, like I said before, it was bouncing back between the present and the future and the past, because it makes you kind of more excited and more curious to see what's going to happen. I also think the characters are fleshed in a very strategic and smart way, which I think overall makes the book a lot more compelling. Actually, I read a comment under one of my videos recently that someone basically said they really weren't liking it and that it offers no commentaries, but I would disagree, and I think that the way that it tackles higher education and intellectualism and specifically the way that it critiques intellectualism and people who kind of see themselves as superior to others because of their education was really interesting. But it's also just a very atmospheric and engaging book. I think, that being said, the writing is quite slow and the story takes a lot of time because you're really just trying to follow the lives of these characters without focusing on everything that's important or on the things that are most enthralling to read. But yes, overall, really recommend it if you have never tried to read this book and you've been thinking about it and been intimidated. Honestly, I think it's really not that hard to get into or to understand, and you will probably really enjoy just looking at theories at the end because that's just really fun to do. But it's also even more easy to understand if you try to take it in with the audiobook as well, which I really wanted to give a special mention to that, because once I started reading it with the audiobook, it was even more easy to be inside of the story. The way that Donna Tartt narrates was really, really good. So yes, and that leaves me to say goodbye for all of you guys who don't want to see spoilers. This is your last warning because I'm going to jump into spoilers. So have a great rest of your day or night, and I'll see you soon. Hi, I'm in bed. I'm at chapter 4 and I'm kind of shocked about the murder of the random guy that Henry and Francis and Charles killed. I don't know why I didn't think that that was going to be it, but I think I was taken aback because the book starts with Bunny's death, so I expected the book to lead up to Bunny's murder because I'm assuming it's a murder. In fact, I'm wondering if the death of this man leads to Bunny's murder in any way. I'm assuming that it does in a way, but I'm not sure how. I don't know if he's going to threaten everyone, but I also don't know how this brings Richard into it, although Richard has been really strangely accepting of the fact that they've murdered someone, which is really odd. I really want to know if Bunny's death is intentional or accidental, because this murder was accidental, so I'm wondering if like they murdered Bunny on accident or if they full on plan it. Maybe it's the old criminology major in me that's wondering all the intricacies of that, but I'm really curious. I'm also confused about what the Bacchanals thing was. Like, why were they trying to invoke the gods? Like, they're so strange. I don't know why they do that. Henry especially is the most compelling character to me right now. I really like Francis and the twins, but Henry is such an interesting character because he's so pretentious, but he also reads very aloof or out of date with how people actually act. Bunny is insufferable. I'm really disliking Bunny. Sometimes I like him, and then most of the time I don't. He's a racist and a misogynist, so not fun. But yeah, honestly, Donna Tartt has been so good at actually making me so interested in this. But I'm also kind of bothered by the fact that Richard is so unbothered. And that's basically all my thoughts up till now. It's gonna be really funny to edit this because I'll know everything by then. So it'll be really funny to see what I thought back when I was reading. Not that that makes any sense, but yeah. Hello. I have updates on what has been going on. I am at chapter 8, so the last chapter, and to be more specific about my earlier update, I am so confused with what's gonna happen because I thought that Bunny's death would happen at like the second to last chapter, and that the last chapter would be the follow-up of the death, and I've had no idea how this book is gonna end. I don't even have a theory because I'm so lost. But since my last spoiler update, which was I think chapter 4, there's been so much that went on. Partly Bunny's murder, which I really liked the way that she wrote it and was like really quick about it, but we're finally getting to see some of Richard's guilt. Also, the fact that Richard wasn't supposed to be there at all was really interesting as well. The fact that it was fully premeditated was also quite shocking. Henry is really interesting because he's so unbothered by murdering Bunny. I feel like the others are, struggling with their conscience. Specifically Richard. I feel like he's finally showing some guilt over what they did, which was crazy. Yeah, I don't know, because like we read the aftermath of the murder, which is what the prologue is about, is them worrying that they didn't find Bunny because of the snow, and that obviously happened. And then the police was on campus, there was like the officers and everything, and the last chapter was just a funeral. So I'm so confused with where this is gonna go or what's gonna happen, because I don't know how long after Richard is supposed to be writing the story. Like, this could be years down the line when he's explaining everything, but it could just be a couple years, though I think it is longer than that. And from what I'm understanding, he loses contact with these people, I think. I'm not sure. So yeah, I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm assuming they don't get found out ever, because the way it's written is making me assume that they're not in prison, or at least Richard isn't. So I don't know what's gonna happen. I'm really, really, really curious. I'm so lost, I think, that I can't even imagine anything, which is even worse, because I'm just like, what's going on, or what's gonna go on. Also, Donna Tartt's voice in the audiobook is so good. I'm just gonna have to, when I reread this book at some point, if I ever reread it, listen to the audiobook fully, because it's just been so interesting. I'm gonna listen to a bit of it right now. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say. I'll be back, obviously, once I have actual answers to all of my questions. Okay, so now that I have really sat down with my thoughts and my personal theories, and that I've looked at a lot of theories, I kind of wanted to jump into all of that. First and foremost, I did not see Henry's death coming. I expected a culminating point or a climax in the story, but I didn't think that it would be Henry's death. And I have my personal theory about Henry's death, but I kind of want to get into more specifics with the characters first and what I thought of each of them. So I'm gonna start with Julian, because I think Julian is one of those characters that, despite not being on page a lot, has such an influence on how the core group act, and his presentation as a father figure, but at the same time his depiction as someone who is so enthralled in academia that he kind of ignores the real world really impacts what they do and how they act, specifically when it comes to the Bacchanals, because he influences them to do it, but he's also, I guess, really closely communicating with Henry, and I think he has such a big influence on what Henry does. For the twins, I was really shocked with the incest, but not completely at the same time. I guess it was more in the same way as Richard, where I kind of felt it in a way, but at the same time I was like, maybe my mind is going like really far into this and imagining something that's not happening. Obviously it was. So that was really shocking. Yeah, I think the way that they end up completely separated and out of each other's lives at the end is really telling to the extent of their relationship with one another, because Camilla, I guess, sort of blames Charles for Henry's death and she's never able to get past it. Francis, I think, is a very interesting character as well, and his homosexuality is a very big part of this, which also ties into the sexualities of everybody, because it really just shows again how power and education are intricately linked with sexuality and sexual dynamics. But the way that it's described that he was kind of taking advantage of Charles when he was drunk, but at some point we also see that he kind of does that with Richard, I think is really interesting. Henry himself, I think, is a very complex character, and I'll get into my personal theory on the book and what Henry did and why Henry did it, but I think he's the true representation of how being smart does not necessarily or does not always make you a good person. His relationship to the others and his relationship to Julian is what I found most fascinating. And as for Richard, it's really hard to talk about him because we're under his point of view, so everything that he says has to be, to an extent, subjective. And he also mentions quite a few times that he's a really good liar, and so I'm wondering to what extent everything he said is true or untrue, because again, he's seeing it and recounting it through his eyes, through what he lived. But at the same time, Richard is not stupid, and I think like some of the things that may be mentioned could be straight up lies, especially the way that he paints Bunny, because a lot of the first part of the book is really focusing on painting Bunny as a bad person to justify the murder. And I guess it's also to justify Richard's feelings towards the others, which I found really interesting. Now on to theories that I personally adhere to. My theory is that Julian was kind of the puppeteer to an extent with the core group, where I think he was kind of treating them like a Greek play or like Greek mythology, and he was really exercising his power over them through Henry. But I also think that Henry's own fascination with the Greek world and his love for Greek made him kill himself, because he knew that it would not only paint him as a hero, a tragic hero, but it would also mean that he'd always have a sort of looming presence in their future. But at the same time, I think that when he appears in Richard's dream and says that he does not find any peace in death, it's really telling of the whole idea that no matter if you think that the murder of somebody was justified, I guess for them, it really just shows that they won't ever be able to get over the fact that they did that, which is interesting. My point, I guess, is just that I think that Henry was specifically most interested in treating his life as a Greek play or as elements of Greek mythology, that he kind of loses his own humanity, and he also, to an extent, he wanted to kind of be put on a pedestal by the others. And we really see that in the aftermath, where none of them were able to live a good life and be happy. Camilla's never able to get over his death, but not only that, they kind of lose contact with each other. Richard has to go back to California, and then Francis is just never able to accept his homosexuality, and Charles is just still battling with all of the anger that he had for Henry. When it comes to Julian specifically, I think that he knew that they were going to kill Bunny, and when he got that letter, it did not come as a shock. He just didn't want to be linked to it, and that's why he fled. But I think he knew very well that they were going to kill Bunny, especially because he converses with Henry so much in Greek and no one understands. But it also shows through Bunny's letter to Julian the extent to to which he was such a big presence in all of their lives. And as Richard mentions, they're all fascinated with him and they all see him as their father figure. None of them have a father or parental figure, and they push that onto Julian, and he, I think, manipulates that a little bit as well. So yeah, that's my personal theory. I saw like so many interesting theories, one of them being that no one existed or that Bunny didn't even exist, which I thought was strange. But yes, like I was saying in the overall review, non-spoiler, I've been thinking about this book so much that I've been enjoying it a lot more, thinking of the theories and really wanting to go back and reread it. When I finished, initially I really liked this book, but my expectations for it were maybe a bit high. But now that I've really sat through with it, it just keeps rising as one of my favorite books because I keep thinking about it and I keep theorizing it and I keep wanting to understand and wanting to get back inside and read it again with the knowledge of what actually happens in the end. Really, really great story, and I really, really enjoyed it, and I'm so happy that I finally gave it a chance. I'm so excited to get into The Goldfinch by Donna Tartt because I think I'm gonna love that story as well. But yeah, I'll see you guys in my next video, and yeah, bye.